Have you ever noticed this? The person who laughs a little too much, a little too quickly, a little too easily. The one who turns almost everything into a joke, even when the situation clearly doesn't call for it. At first, it just looks like personality, like they're fun, easygoing, positive. But the more you pay attention, the more something feels slightly off. Because people who laugh too much are usually not just expressing happiness. They are hiding something far more uncomfortable, and most of the time, they don't even realize how often they are doing it. If you're already starting to recognize these patterns in people around you, slow down for a second and just observe it without trying to label it immediately, because once you really see it, you can't easily unsee it. What's even more interesting is that it often changes how you interpret even simple conversations. Because laughter for some people is not just communication, it is control, it is deflection, it is protection. And underneath that constant humor is something very specific they are trying to avoid, sitting alone with their own emotions. Let's slow this down. Imagine two people walking into the same moment. Something goes wrong, a mistake happens, the room gets quiet. There is tension in the air. One person freezes. They feel the discomfort. They sit in it. The other person immediately cracks a joke. Everyone laughs. The tension disappears. But here is something most people miss. Both people saw the same moment, but only one of them actually stayed inside it. One experienced it. The other escaped it. And if you've ever noticed that your first instinct in uncomfortable silence is to fill it with something, that's already part of this pattern, because that escape didn't start randomly. It was learned and reinforced over time, and in many cases, it started much earlier than people realize, sometimes in childhood environments where emotional reactions were unpredictable, where silence felt unsafe, or where expressing feelings didn't lead to comfort, but to tension or dismissal. So the brain did something very efficient. It stopped waiting for emotions to settle naturally and started interrupting them instead. It built a shortcut: reduce emotional intensity as fast as possible. And over time, that shortcut stops feeling like a strategy and starts feeling like personality, not because the person is fake, but because the brain always chooses what works fastest in order to maintain stability. And the fastest emotional escape humans have is humor, because humor doesn't just distract, it reorganizes the emotional structure of a moment. It shifts attention, it resets tone, it gives immediate relief without explanation, and it creates a shared experience that temporarily replaces discomfort with connection. And if you think about it, that is a form of control. Because if you can control how a moment feels, you are not just reacting to it anymore, you are shaping it. And for someone who has experienced emotional unpredictability or inconsistency in relationships, that sense of control becomes extremely valuable, almost automatic. So without ever being consciously taught, a rule forms in the background. If I can make it funny, I don't have to feel what's underneath it. And the interesting part is that this doesn't just apply to negative emotions. It often extends even to positive vulnerability, like compliments, emotional closeness, or moments where someone tries to connect more deeply because depth itself can feel like exposure. Now here's something worth noticing in real life. How often do people around you use humor specifically when things get emotionally uncomfortable? Not just in obvious moments, but in subtle ones too, like silence after a personal question, or a shift in tone in conversation. Over time, this response becomes automatic, not a choice anymore, a reflex, a system running silently in the background. Any moment that contains discomfort gets converted instantly. Serious tone becomes humor. Emotional silence gets filled. Vulnerability gets redirected. And from the outside, it works extremely well. These people feel easy to be around. They lighten rooms. They reduce tension, they keep conversations moving. They are often seen as socially intelligent, charismatic, emotionally smooth, and even emotionally safe in a social sense. But internally, something very different is happening. Because while everyone else is reacting to what is happening, they are reacting to what might happen next, constantly adjusting before anything even fully forms. And this is where something subtle becomes visible if you pay attention long enough. Psychology calls it hypervigilance, but in real life, it doesn't feel like a concept. It feels like background processing that never shuts off. Constant scanning, constant interpretation, constant prediction, as if the mind is always one step ahead of the present moment. They are not just in conversations, they are monitoring them. Tone shifts, micro pauses, facial expressions, energy changes that others don't consciously register, and even small shifts in pacing or silence can feel meaningful to them in a way others don't experience. And once you start seeing this pattern in real life, it becomes hard to ignore, because what looks like effortless social skill is often constant internal processing. Before others even realize something has changed, they already feel it, and they respond first, usually with humor, because humor prevents emotional escalation before it fully forms. But here's the hidden cost. When you spend years managing emotional environments instead of directly experiencing them, you become extremely functional externally but slightly disconnected internally, because emotional honesty requires stillness, and stillness is exactly what the system was built to avoid. Over time, this also changes how relationships feel, because even in safe connections, there is a subtle background awareness of control, timing, and emotional pacing, as if part of the mind is always evaluating what can safely be expressed and what should be softened. So when someone asks a simple question like, "Are you okay?" there is often a micro delay, not confusion, not ignorance, but internal sorting. Which version of the truth is safe in this moment? And almost always, the answer defaults to something lighter. I'm good. I'm fine. A small smile, a joke, a change of subject. Not because of intentional dishonesty, but because full emotional truth often feels heavier than the moment can hold without disrupting it. And this is important. Over time, this creates a very specific type of person, highly reliable externally, emotionally stable on the surface, the one people depend on, the one who shows up when things go wrong, the one who doesn't fall apart when others do. But internally, they are rarely receiving the same level of emotional support they give, because needing others feels unpredictable, unstable, and sometimes even unfamiliar. So independence becomes default, not as personality, but as safety mechanism that runs automatically in the background. And here is the contradiction that forms. They want closeness, but they regulate it. They want depth, but they control exposure. So they exist in a middle state, close enough to connect, far enough to stay protected. And if you've ever felt like someone is emotionally present, but not fully emotionally reachable, that is often what you are sensing. A kind of controlled proximity rather than full openness. But here's something even deeper. These people are not emotionally shallow. They are often extremely emotionally detailed. They notice subtle shifts in tone. They pick up subtext others miss. They understand people quickly. But instead of expressing it directly, they convert it into humor, observation, and analysis, because direct emotional expression feels too exposed, too permanent, too vulnerable. So instead of "this hurt me," it becomes a joke. Instead of "I feel overwhelmed," it becomes lightness. Instead of "I need support," it becomes silence or topic change. And over time, emotional life shifts from expression to translation, where everything passes through filters before it reaches the surface. But emotions don't disappear just because they are filtered. They stay unprocessed, delayed, stored, and over time, silence becomes more intense internally, not because it is empty, but because it is no longer controlled. It allows everything postponed to rise again. And that's why stillness can feel uncomfortable for some people, not externally, but internally, because when nothing is happening, the system has nothing left to manage. So they stay in motion. Conversation, humor, activity, anything that keeps emotional depth from fully surfacing. And eventually emotions begin arriving late, first as thoughts, then as feelings, creating a delay between experience and awareness of experience. And that delay creates a subtle disconnection, not numbness, not emptiness, but timing, mismatch between what happens and what is actually felt. Which is exactly why humor becomes so important. It fills the delay instantly. It stabilizes emotional uncertainty. It replaces unpredictability with structure, and it keeps everything socially functional in real time. But the cost builds slowly because constant emotional regulation takes energy even when nothing is wrong. Even in safe environments, even in normal conversations, the system never fully turns off. So here is something worth sitting with. How often do you actually stay inside a feeling without immediately changing it, escaping it, or explaining it away? Because for many people, that question feels unfamiliar, and that is why there is often a quiet exhaustion that doesn't match external life, not physical fatigue, but internal load, like something is always running in the background. And even calm moments don't always feel calm, because calm removes structure, and without structure, what was held back starts to surface. But this is not a flaw, it is adaptation, a system built to survive emotional unpredictability that simply never got the signal to stop, so the laughter was never just personality, it was strategy. And once you understand that, you start seeing people differently, and sometimes even yourself a little more clearly. And that's why laughter is never just personality. It is a strategy. And once you understand that, you start seeing people differently, and sometimes even yourself a little more clearly. If this made you see something in a different way, consider subscribing, because we explore these kinds of psychological patterns in depth here. And there's another video on the screen right now that you might want to watch next.